Greetings, everybody. This is Silver Thunder, the extraordinarily ordinary gaming squirrel, coming back at you with some more Monster Hunter Wilds this week. Today, we're going to be hunting a tempered Gore Magala here in the Ice Shard Cliffs. And I want to say, I'm not going to say this is going to be one of my most polished hunts. There's definitely some sloppy moments in here. To be fair, this was the first game that I played this morning that I decided to record, and this may have not been the best hunt to warm up with. Take that as you will. I promise that I am just not trying to make up for my lack of skill, but Gore Magala is such a fun guy. He has such a frantic moveset, and I always kind of have to be in a good mindset to fight him, even though he is probably one of my favorite monsters of all time. I have a huge poster of him, specifically the For You title card poster of him inside of one of my rooms in my treehouse. So I might have to show you guys that sometime. But yeah, he's such a cool designed monster. Everybody's favorite resident edgelord and frenzy meister. So without further ado, here is me hunting Gore Magala, and while I hunt Gore Magala, I am also waxing philosophical this morning. Well, maybe not extreme philosophy or anything like that. Nothing as deep or esoteric as some of the other topics that we have talked about are, but this one is more in specific mind to video games. Namely, we're going to be talking about overrated mechanics in modern video games, I should say specifically. I know, another opinion about how modern video games suck. How original. Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, may not necessarily be entirely original, but also I'm not trying to advocate that all modern video games suck. Obviously not. I'm playing one as we speak. But specific focus of like certain mechanics that I feel like could be good, could be better, or I feel like that might just be dragging down the industry as a whole. You have to understand when it comes to video game mechanics, developers, especially as video games rise in cost and rise in time also to develop. Well, actually, not in time. They're being crunched, higher cost, shorter deadlines to develop. That developers and companies and shareholders are going to bank on the things that have been demonstrated to work, that the general public has voted with their wallets to pay for. So, not necessarily trying to blame shift to an audience, but, you get more of what you pay for. And I think these mechanics are largely a result of that, is that they have been paid for, especially in the last decade or so. And whether people like them or not, they are here until our wallets say otherwise, more than anything else. So here's, like I said, just a few of them that have like a little bit of a personal grievance for me. And games that contain these are not automatically bad. I'll go ahead and preface that. These are just mechanics that I wish would be either developed more or went into a different direction instead of their current incarnations. And I'll try to provide examples. Don't know if I'll be able to rack my brain for specific ones for everything, but well, here we go. The first one, and I think Monster Hunter Wilds is a definite guilty party in this, and I know that I had fussed about that in my last video talking about the Ascendance expansion, and that is hand-holding and tutorialization. So many modern games really get this wrong and really get way, way, way too heavy-handed with it. And Monster Hunter Wilds, I think, is probably it is indisputably the biggest culprit of this in the entire Monster Hunter series, and definitely a pretty bad one for modern games in general. It got to the point where even big game journalist companies were complaining about like the ease of the gameplay, too much dialogue, too much hand-holding and things like that. Now, whether or not they were jumping on the bandwagon that was going on against Wilds at the time, I don't know. That's not for me to say. I can't read their minds. I can only go by what they say. But there's just way too much tutorialization in Wilds, and I get it. On one aspect, it's for the new players to Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is a very mechanically intensive game. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and quit. That was me whenever I first started playing these games. It took It took about 2 or 3 different Monster Hunter games for it to really click for me. So I get that, wanting to ease the curve a little bit, but whenever you are so heavy-handed with tutorialization, characters telling you every which second, what to do, and if the character dialogue, if somehow you miss that, you got the button prompts coming up on the screen. Heck, I even still have the controller things, combos enabled on the top right corner of the screen. I really need to take that off, honestly. So, not trying to eat my own words, but it's a setting that I do forget exists. But, just things like that. If you're going to have tutorialization like that, I really think there needs to be an option to opt out of it. In Monster Hunter Wilds, I'm playing through Wilds again just to prepare myself for the Ascendance expansion, and also see if my opinions from the last video are holding up. And even when you tell it to disable, like, a large part of the tutorialization, there is still a lot. And I wish that there was a way to either skip it entirely or to just disable, like, some of the voiceover, or more of the voiceover regarding it. It just, I don't know, it just feels much. And Monster Hunter is definitely not the only games that are guilty of this. They're pretty much fire up a AAA game nowadays, and you will most likely have a whole lot of tutorialization that is ahead of you, that is probably mandatory, unskippable, all of those things. Ultimately, I believe that too heavy-handed tutorialization really undermines player agency. And I think that is the most important part about any video game, about getting immersed into the video game world, is to have agency. And whenever you're being spoon-fed, told what to do, one, it undermines a confidence in the player that they will figure out mechanics, that they will figure out things with trial and error. Two, it robs the player of trial and error experiences. I really feel like that's something that players need to have. Otherwise, you might as well be watching a movie, if you're just wanting to not really be an active participant in the content that's going on, then you might as well watch a film. I don't know. That's just my take on it. We want to be players that are empowered to figure these things out. There's nothing like that dopamine hit of, oh, hold on, I have to turn up the volume on this part because apparently Gore snores. Yeah, listen to him. He sounds like my dog. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt things, but I just thought that's hilarious that he sound like. One of the little details of Monster Hunter I do like is that Gore was straight up snoring like a dog. That's funny. Anyhow, where was I? Ah, yes, talking about more tutorialization and player agency. Overall, I want to be in charge of the experience in the sense of I want to be the one to figure things out, because if I am handed too many things, it really messes with my brain, and it really gets that instant gratification loop going that I was mentioning before, that it's such an easy pitfall to fall into, that it makes me not want to engage with the game mechanics. It just makes me my brain wants to be spoon-fed to, if it's, spoon-fed to too many times. So, let me know what you think. If you agree with me or disagree with me. But we're going to move on to my next mechanic gripe in Monster, and not Monster Hunter, but modern gaming. And that is, honestly, the presence of open worlds. And unfortunately, Wilds is kind of a victim of this. It's not truly an open world, but it's pretty darn close, and it's pretty clear that that's the trajectory that they're wanting to take Monster Hunter in as soon as the technology and performance avails them, and that is making Monster Hunter into an open world game. And so many video games, the Ghost of series, just so many different games like the Ghost Recon series. Open worlds, I don't know, I have really mixed feelings on. Whenever I was a kid, I thought open world games were some of the most coolest things in the entire world. Really, really neat to be part of such a big video game world. And honestly, back then, they were especially huge technical feats on consoles that really that really weren't reputed for being able to simulate an entire world. And game series, like Grand Theft Auto, really perfected that formula. Just Cause is another one that I'm thinking of. But I feel like that the problem arises when every single modern developer, especially AAA developers, feel like that they need to take an open world approach to games, especially when games are coming out in such horribly optimized states nowadays. Like the PC hardware of the average person or squirrel can't really compete with the amount of technical demands that these games comes out, and then you slap an open world on top of that, and that just like increases the number of processes and things being simulated and things being shown on screen exponentially. And you're left with a really big problem that, you have a game which core gameplay was not initially designed around an open world. I think especially the Assassin's Creed series. Oh, I'm sorry, not Assassin's Creed. I had a different game series in mind, but I'll have to, if I think of it, I'll let you know. But you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Like a game that was not initially an open world, but now is an open world, or has attempted open worlds. And I just don't think having a large world like that just for the sake of having it, or just because everybody else is doing it, really lends the games any favors. I feel like that it just introduces way more problems than innovations it actually helps bring to the series. Once again, let me know your thoughts about that, but I just don't think that open worlds are really something that's worth sacrificing a game's performance for. I would much rather have a game that is smaller in scope, dare I say it, a little linear, instead of having a big open world just for the sake of it. Another mechanic. I don't know if you want to necessarily call this a mechanic, but I'm going to classify it as a mechanic, is dialogue in general nowadays. Video game characters, I say this as a very chatty little rodent myself, but video game characters nowadays just need to learn to shut up. So much dialogue, so much empty space that is just filled with words that are kind of void of purpose most times, like stating the obvious, well, that happened, or I have a bad feeling about this, things like that. It is, and I think it's a symptom of just bad writing nowadays altogether, but, video games are very much following that trend. Again, I hate to be picking on Monster Hunter Wilds, but Monster Hunter Wilds is also really bad for this too. There's not a whole lot of time, especially in between hunts, where there's a period of just silence, or of just listening to people move around and activity going on, instead of someone yapping almost all the time, especially in the story segments. There's got to be some room for scenes to breathe, and for gamers to breathe. And once again, it ties back into the agency thing that I was discussing earlier. If you have a character that is just not shutting up and just is telling you what to do and how to do it, cluing you into the problem that needs to be figured out, giving you a hint for the puzzle that is unwarranted, unsolicited, it just really robs the player of a lot of agency and the experience of figuring these things out for ourselves. So, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's much more of a symptom of modern writing overall. But there really needs to be so much more showing and not telling. And the excessive dialogue of many modern games very much is the telling and not showing. Kind of rips me right out of the immersion. And lastly, the last mechanic that I had in mind to discuss today would be, and this might be a little bit of a controversial one because I like these mechanics in and of themselves, but I also know that they are largely unnecessary, and that is the RPG/loot mechanics appearing in games that are not built around them, that are not originally made for them. And this is where I was thinking of Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is probably one of the biggest culprits of that. Heck, most Ubisoft open world games are where you have the open world to explore. Ubisoft is they're usually the ones who are behind the big open worlds, but then you have the unnecessary Diablo style loot systems attached to them, and a lot of players of those games really feel, myself included, I've only played a handful of them over the years. They're really unnecessary at the end of the day. They're not making a Diablo game. They were making a Far Cry or an Assassin's Creed game, and it ends up kind of being an arbitrary thing at the end of the day. Like, what's the point if there's not really anything special that's happening to the weapons other than their colors are getting increasingly brighter and prettier over time. And it's just a way, I guess, to gate people out of certain areas of the game. I don't know. For me, it just kind of feels unnecessary and doesn't really synergize very well with the design philosophy of those kind of games. I don't know. There is a point where melding of genres needs to occur, kind of like music with music. You need to meld genres in order to really create something new. So I don't want to take away from innovation in those things, but at the same time, sometimes things kind of feel too disparate to actually put together. Well, we will go ahead and wrap things up here. That is one dead Gore Magala in the bag, and thank you so much for joining me in this discussion today. I really enjoy being able to have these conversations and think through these topics, and if you have any thoughts, if you have any feedback of what you want to talk about next, or what you want to discuss about next, or if you disagree with my opinions, then feel free to vehemently make that case down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and keep on doing this current rotation of a different game each week. I'll circle back to Call of Duty, I think, next week. That's what I'm looking at. I just happened to play Wilds because I saw the expansion announcement, and I'm like, I've got to do that. Couldn't resist. But anyhow, this has been Silver Thunder. Thank you again very much for tuning in and all your support so far, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Take care, stay safe, and store those acorns for the winter.